Hi, Mr. Nelson Senior here with Mr. Nelson Junior. We're just going to go through Pyung Hyung. That is the first of the Pyung forms. Mr. Nelson is going to demonstrate. You're going to see it first, all the way through at normal speed, just like Mr. Nelson was doing his Dan test. And then on the second go, we're going to go through, we're going to talk about all the different little bits and pieces of detail. Okay, so Mr. Nelson Junior is going to model because he's way better looking than I am. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Pyung at normal speed. Hey! Hey! Okay, so now we're going to watch Mr. Nelson all the way through, but in stages, and we're going to make sure that we pick up on all the pieces of detail that you need for Pyung Hyung. So the first move, Mr. Nelson is going to look, he looks to his left, and he steps out into a low block front stance. Okay, now make sure when you step out into a low block front stance, you have a good, solid front stance. So you can see there Mr. Nelson's feet are on two separate lines. His back up nice and straight, his eyes pointed forward. Nice tension in that low block. The next move, he steps forward into a middle punch front stance. Good, and again, Mr. Nelson, look at that, he hasn't gone too narrow on his stance, as you would expect with a third Dan. Punches down at solar plexus level. Okay, good. Next move, he looks over his punching hand and he's going to do a low block 180 degrees the other way, again in a front stance. Good. And before he did that, I don't know whether you noticed, Mr. Nelson, would you go back for me, please? If you noticed, he gained elbow connection as he came round and stepped out into that low block. Good. And again, look at that great front stance. Feet on two separate lines. Those lines are underneath his shoulders. They're like train tracks. Now the next move, he doesn't move his feet, but he goes from a front stance, just do the stance for me, Mr. Nelson, a front stance into a side stance. So notice what happens to his back foot. He twists his back foot to the side into the side stance and bends his back knee. So he's now in a good side stance. And if you need reference on stances, Master Smythe has just done a great video on all the different stances. As he does that move, he bends his front arm to 90 degrees and does a cap quan, a back fist, over the top of his front knee. So again, you can see from the front, Mr. Nelson, he goes from a front stance, low block, to a cap quan, side stance. Good. And then from there, he's going to draw his front foot in and do a big extravagant hammer fist over the top and strike somebody on the top of the head. And if you look at his feet, one foot pointing forwards and one foot pointing to the side. The next move, he's going to hold his hip back as he steps forward into a middle punch front stance and snaps that out. And again, solar plexus height, feet on two separate lines. Lovely. Good. The next move, he's going to look over his punching hand again, step out to the front of the room. And as he does that, he's going to do first just a low blocking front stance. Good. Notice the elbow connection that happened there. Go back again. Show us that again, Mr. Nelson. So the elbow connection, low block. Then his hand, his blocking hand comes back to his rear hip. He's gained elbow connection again. And he does a middle knife hand block with a chambered hand. We sometimes get students asking whether it's a chambered hand or a knife hand on the solar plexus, but it's a chambered hand. Okay, so full speed, if you will, Mr. Nelson, from the side again. And we normally do those two moves to a single count, unless told otherwise. The next moves, nice and simple. We're doing a high block in a front stance. And notice how Mr. Nelson gets elbow connection before sending out the high block. And he didn't key up because I was talking, but that was a key up point. So he key up at the front of the room. Now I'm going to focus from the side. Mr. Nelson's going to turn 270 degrees, so he looks over his left shoulder and turns out into a low block front stance, lovely. Then a middle punch, just like we did at the very beginning. He's going to look over his punching hand, low block with an elbow connection to start with. Then it's a middle punch again in a front stance. Steps out towards the back of the room, looking over his punching hand first, low block again, and then just like basic form 1, he's going to do 3 middle punches in a front stance with a kiap on the last one. Good. And now notice again, Mr. Nelson's stance has not narrowed off. It's still underneath his shoulders and his punch is at solar plexus height. Good. Now the next move, he moves from a front stance and he turns 270 degrees and he goes into a back stance, low knife hand block. So the blocking hand, the low block hand, comes from the shoulder and the other hand comes from the hip and comes up across the solar plexus. So whilst it's a single arm block, we use both hands, one protecting our center, one protecting our lower area. Then he's going to step 45 degrees out towards the corner of the room and do the same again. Now he uses the same arm and same leg to go out low knife hand block, back stance, and then 45 degrees forwards. And then paro, he moves his front foot in, breathes out, attention position, does a bow.